You know, when you plan a massive international trip, you usually spend like weeks just completely fixated on your passport.
Oh, absolutely. It's all you think about.
Right. You check the expiration date 10 times, you make sure you have the exact right visa, you even check that the biometric photo is perfectly aligned,
Okay.
and then you step off the plane in a new country, the border agent stamps the page, and you just exhale. You think, I made it. I am completely clear.
Because your focus is entirely on crossing that primary threshold. You
Exactly.
cleared the big, obvious hurdle, and that creates this incredible sense of invulnerability.
But then you walk maybe 20 feet into the customs area and security pulls you aside.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they open your suitcase and suddenly they are threatening you with a massive fine. And why? Because you brought in an apple that you bought at your departure airport.
Right, the local agricultural laws.
Exactly. You are completely oblivious to them and they operate entirely independent of your passport status.
It is the ultimate blind spot. I mean, being hyper-focused on the primary document causes people to completely ignore these parallel regulations that are, basically just waiting to trip them up the second they cross the border.
And we are taking that exact scenario today and applying it to the digital world. So, welcome, learner, to today's deep dive. We are super thrilled you are joining us.
We really are.
Today, we are shining a massive spotlight on the hidden traps of global digital accessibility, specifically in e-commerce.
It's a huge topic right now.
It really is, and our insights today are extracted from a really fascinating industry report and transcript titled Global Accessibility, Unified Standards for Multi-Market Compliance.
Right.
And our mission for you today is to basically unpack how global companies can expand their digital storefronts into new markets without getting legally and, well, operationally burned by this tangled, chaotic web of international digital rules.
Because the reality we are seeing is that the way most companies attempt to solve digital compliance is it's actually multiplying their risk.
Yeah.
Yeah, largely because they fundamentally misunderstand the architecture of global law.
Okay, let's unpack this because we really have to start with the biggest headline in digital accessibility right now.
The EAA.
Yes. Everyone in the e-commerce space is talking about the EU's European Accessibility Act, or the EAA.
Right.
Companies are scrambling to prepare for it, but our source material points out that treating the EAA as the finish line is exactly what is getting companies into deep trouble.
Yeah, because the EAA is effectively the passport in your analogy.
Okay.
It is taking up literally all the oxygen in corporate boardrooms right now.
I can imagine.
Retailers are treating digital accessibility as if it were a single region problem. They're, pooling all their engineering resources and their legal budgets entirely into EAA readiness.
Making that massive assumption.
Exactly. Assuming that if they can just satisfy this one massive European directive, their global accessibility concerns are totally handled.
But the functional problem there is that the map has fundamentally changed. The report specifically highlights the UK, which, as we know, is no longer in the European Union.
Right. Brexit changed the game.
So all that grueling, super expensive EAA compliance work, the enforcement mechanisms of the EAA do not automatically apply in the UK.
And the danger here is assuming the UK is a regulatory safe harbor simply because they are outside the EAA's jurisdiction.
Which they aren't.
Not at all. The UK operates on a completely separate, parallel legal track. They rely heavily on the Equality Act 2010 and the public sector body's accessibility regulations.
And functionally, those are entirely different types of laws, right?
Yeah.
Like the EAA is a prescriptive product and service directive.
Yes.
It lays out very specific rules for how a digital service must operate within the European market. But the UK's Equality Act is fundamentally civil rights and anti-discrimination legislation.
What's fascinating here is how the differing nature of these laws creates a false sense of security. Well, a company might complete their EAA compliance, observe that the UK's Equality Act has been on the books for over a decade?
Yeah, since 2010.
Right. And they assume they are safe from sudden scrutiny because it's an old law.
Oh, I see.
However, legal enforcement is not static. The report notes that regulators and advocacy groups in the UK are actively signaling a sharp increase in the scrutiny of e-commerce sites right now.
Wow.
Yeah, they're leaning on that older anti-discrimination framework to demand modern digital accessibility.
It's like cramming furiously for a final exam in biology, thinking that is the absolute only hurdle to graduation.
Right.
only to sit down in the lecture hall and realize a chemistry professor is handing out a surprise pop quiz at the exact same time.
That is exactly what it feels like.
I mean, acing the biology test doesn't save your GPA if you fail chemistry. And in the corporate world, failing that parallel test means severe financial penalties and, honestly, massive brand damage.
And the timing is what makes this so volatile. Enforcement attention in the UK is heating up in parallel to the EAA's rollout in the EU.
So they're happening at the same time.
Yes. A company staring only at the continent is blind to the massive legal machinery spinning up right next door.
But wait, I have to push back here. Why are we just talking about the UK and the EU?
That's a fair question.
Because if we zoom out, like every single country has its own distinct laws, its own enforcement agencies, and its own specific phrasing for what constitutes a legal website.
Oh, absolutely.
We have the ADA in the United States driving massive civil litigation. We have the AODA in Canada. We have laws in Australia.
It's everywhere.
So if every country is a bespoke legal puzzle, isn't this going to become an unmanageable global nightmare for anyone trying to sell, like, just a basic T-shirt internationally?
Yeah, if you follow the logic of treating every country as a bespoke legal project, it inevitably leads to an operational nightmare.
I mean, it sounds impossible.
It really is. If a retailer tries to handle each market with a separate compliance workstream, an EU team, a UK team, a US team, the cost structures become astronomical.
Just paying all those lawyers alone.
Exactly. And the digital infrastructure becomes incredibly fragile.
So how does a business actually survive that without going completely bankrupt from compliance overhead?
We have to firmly separate legal compliance from technical reality.
Okay.
While the penalty structures, the enforcement bodies, and the actual legal texts differ wildly across the globe,
Right.
the underlying technical standard they all point to does not.
Ah, the skeleton key.
Yes, exactly. Across all of these different jurisdictions, the underlying technical standard that regulators and courts look to is substantially the same, and that is WCAG 2.1 AA.
Okay, let's break that acronym down for the learner. WCAG stands for the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines.
Right.
It is essentially the universal instruction manual developed by the World Wide Web Consortium for making digital interfaces usable for people with disabilities.
Perfectly said.
But what does the 2.1 AA specifically signify? Because that sounds like a very specific flavor.
It is. The letters and numbers represent versions and conformance levels.
Yep.
So the 2.1 is the version of the guidelines, which updated older standards to better accommodate things like mobile devices and cognitive disabilities.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
And the AA is the critical part. WCAG basically operates on 3 levels, A, AA, and AAA.
Like minor league baseball.
Exactly. Level A represents the absolute bare minimum of accessibility. Like without it, assistive technologies simply cannot function at all.
Wow, okay.
Then you have level AAA, which is incredibly strict and honestly often not feasible for complex dynamic e-commerce sites.
It's just too rigid.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
level AA is the global sweet spot. It is the legal consensus that balances rigorous usability with modern web design.
So to function at a level AA, we are talking about ensuring, say, there is sufficient color contrast between text and backgrounds.
Yes.
Or guaranteeing that a user who cannot use a mouse can navigate an entire checkout process using literally only their keyboard.
Exactly. Or ensuring every visual element has a text alternative for screen readers. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the legal teams in different countries are reading entirely different legal codes.
Right. The lawyers are in their own silos.
But the software engineers are looking at the exact same technical reality. The ability of a visually impaired user's screen reader to successfully parse a Buy Now button that does not change based on whether that user is sitting in London, Paris, or New York.
Oh, that's such a good point.
The technical requirement to navigate an interface is a universal human need.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because we can think of this like building an international hotel chain.
Okay, I like where this is going.
You don't invent new bespoke bricks for every single city you build a hotel in, right?
No, of course not.
You use a universally strong, deeply tested standard brick for the physical foundation and the load-bearing walls. Then, on top of that universal foundation, you just adapt to the local zoning laws or the design permits.
The report heavily advocates for exactly this model. If a global retailer builds their digital experience to genuinely meet WCAG 2.1 WA, they're not managing 10 separate compliance programs.
They're just managing one.
They're maintaining one incredibly solid technical foundation that inherently satisfies multiple disparate legal frameworks simultaneously.
Okay. Adopting one universal technical standard sounds incredibly neat and tidy in theory.
It does.
But I want to explore the friction of reality here. In the fast-paced, really messy ecosystem of global e-commerce, where thousands of products are added daily, marketing campaigns change overnight, code is deployed continuously.
It's a chaotic environment.
Where does this unified approach actually fall apart? Like,
Yeah.
how do well-intentioned companies still get burned?
They get burned when they treat accessibility as a static certification rather than a continuous operational reality.
Ah.
The source material outlines 3 specific, real-world failure modes that disrupt this unified strategy.
Okay.
The first is perhaps the most insidious, which the report labels the localization blind spot.
Walk us through how that happens.
Okay, imagine an e-commerce brand builds a perfectly compliant, beautifully accessible website in English.
The perfect brick.
Exactly. Then they decide to expand into the French and German markets. The localization team translates the text, they update the currency converters, and they push the site live.
Sounds standard.
But the failure occurs because they never retest the accessibility of those newly localized experiences.
Oh. The assumption being the core engineering passed the accessibility audit, so swapping out the text shouldn't break the underlying code.
Right, which is a fundamental misunderstanding of how web development works.
Because languages are different sizes.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Translating English into German often results in significantly longer words. Suddenly, a button designed for a short English word cannot contain the German translation.
Oh, wow.
The text breaks out of its container, it overlaps other elements, making it impossible for a user with cognitive or visual impairments to understand the page structure.
And what happens to the hidden elements like the alt text that screen readers rely on?
Often, the visible text on the page gets translated, but the hidden descriptions of images get completely left behind in English.
Yikes.
Or they get dropped entirely by automated translation software. So a visually impaired shopper in France is navigating a French website, but their screen reader is suddenly reading out English descriptions when they focus on a product image.
That's incredibly disorienting.
It instantly transforms a usable experience into a major compliance violation.
It's like exporting a highly engineered car to the UK, moving the steering wheel to the right side of the dashboard so it fits the local market,
Right.
but completely forgetting to move the brake pedal over with it.
Exactly.
It looks correct on the surface, but functionally, it is an absolute disaster waiting to happen.
This raises an important question about internal corporate workflows, because the localization blind spot really exposes the reality that translation departments, marketing teams, and engineering departments are operating in deep silos.
They aren't talking to each other.
No, they are not transferring accessibility requirements across departmental lines.
Which brings us to the second pitfall, which stems from a very similar mindset issue, doesn't it?
Yes, the finish line trap. This happens when executive leadership treats major regulations, like the EAA, as a one-time project.
A box to check.
Exactly. They allocate a budget, the engineers work furiously for 6 months, the company hits the EAA milestone, and leadership declares victory, and then the accessibility team is disbanded or reassigned.
Which completely ignores the fact that modern websites are not printed books, they are living ecosystems.
Exactly.
If you deploy new code every week, your accessibility degrades every week if you aren't watching it.
Right.
You cross the finish line of the EAA marathon, you stop running, and you immediately get lapped by UK enforcement actions 3 months later because your continuous deployment introduced all new barriers.
Which naturally accelerates a company into the third failure mode, whack-a-mole compliance.
Oh, that sounds exhausting.
It is. When companies lack that central, continuous standard brick we discussed, they resort to building reactive market-by-market fixes only when a legal threat materializes.
I can visualize the absolute chaos this creates in a code base. The U.S. legal team gets a demand letter regarding the checkout page, so the U.S. developers scramble to patch the code specifically for the American site.
Right.
Meanwhile, the EU site is still running the broken checkout flow.
And then the UK team gets flagged by a regulator for an inaccessible navigation menu. So they build a bespoke fix for their region, but they code it entirely differently than the US team would have.
Because they aren't talking to the U.S. team.
Exactly. Over time, you accumulate massive technical debt.
The digital footprint becomes a patchwork quilt. The platform is accessible in one market, totally broken in another, and just held together by digital duct tape everywhere else.
Yeah.
The long-term cost of untangling that branch code must be astronomical.
It creates a super fragile system where an update to one part of the site breaks compliance in another region entirely. It is vastly more expensive than just building it correctly the first time.
So if these operational pitfalls are this common, let's reverse engineer a defense.
Let's do it.
For you, the listener, whether you are managing a massive digital product team or you simply want to understand how these global platforms actually maintain their infrastructure, what does a sane step-by-step blueprint look like based on the source material?
Well, the report provides a four-part infrastructure blueprint to operationalize this defense. The foundational move, step 1, is to adopt WCAG 2.1 AA as the single internal technical standard across the entire organization.
The universal brick.
Exactly. It cannot be treated as a regional add-on. It must be the non-negotiable floor for every product, every page, in every market.
But a mandate isn't a mechanism. How does a company actually enforce that standard across hundreds of developers spread all around the world?
By embedding it into their component libraries.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. When a developer pulls a digital building block like a drop-down menu or a form field from the company's central design system, that component must already be pre-coded to meet WCAG standards.
So they don't have a choice.
Right. You remove the burden of building accessible elements from scratch every single time.
That secures the foundation. But how do we bridge the gap with the translators to fix that localization blind spot we just discussed?
That is the second piece of the blueprint. Building accessibility testing directly into the localization and translation workflows.
So making it part of the process.
Yes. When a new language version is generated, it cannot bypass quality assurance. It must receive the exact same rigorous accessibility scrutiny as the primary market version.
Right.
You audit the German site's CSS containers and the French site's alt text just as aggressively as the English original.
Which leads to a massive organizational challenge. Because if you are auditing multiple languages and deploying across different regions, you need a way to track all of this without losing your mind.
And that's step 3. It demands a single, centralized accessibility audit and remediation log globally.
One list to rule them all.
Exactly. A company must maintain one single source of truth for accessibility bugs. You cannot have the U.S. team tracking issues in Jira, the U.K. team using a spreadsheet, and the EU team relying on automated software dashboards that don't talk to each other.
Because if you do not have global visibility into what is broken, you are instantly back to playing whack-a-mole.
100%.
You have to be able to identify a bug in the code, fix it in the central repository, and push that accessible fix out to every regional variation simultaneously.
That unified technical approach allows us to execute the final step of the blueprint, step 4, layering market-specific legal awareness on top of the robust technical foundation.
Just to clarify for the learner, we aren't tracking local laws so we can build different websites for each of them, right?
No. The technical foundation remains unified.
Yeah.
You track the local legal landscape, understanding the UK equality bodies, monitoring EAA penalty structures, analyzing U.S. litigation trends, so you understand exactly what the risk exposure is if your technical foundation experiences a failure.
Ah, so it's about triage.
Exactly. It empowers a company to prioritize fixes based on legal risk, rather than attempting to build bespoke technical solutions. The report actually uses a powerful analogy here involving payment processing.
Oh, I love this analogy. Basically, if a global enterprise sells products in 20 different countries, they do not build 20 completely separate from scratch payment processing architectures.
That would be wildly inefficient.
Exactly. They build one incredibly secure, robust core system capable of handling the underlying transaction data.
Then they adapt the local variables like currency conversion, local tax rates, or preferred regional payment methods around that unified core system.
And accessibility should be the same.
Accessibility must be architected in the exact same manner. It is core infrastructure built once to a high global standard with local legal variables managed around it.
So what does this all mean? If we synthesize this entire four-part blueprint, the core philosophy is really about separating your technical foundation from your legal awareness.
Yes.
You fiercely unify the engineering standard globally, but you carefully localize the legal risk assessment.
It represents a fundamental mindset shift for corporate leadership. You're moving from a posture of reactive legal compliance to one of proactive, stable digital infrastructure.
Which brings us to the core takeaway that we want to leave you with today, derived straight from the insights of this industry report. If you want to expand a digital business globally without getting burned,
Build to a single, rigorous accessibility standard as your technical foundation.
Understand the local legal landscape in every market you enter.
And never assume that a compliance victory in one jurisdiction automatically shields you in another.
Treat the standard as universal, but respect the local enforcement.
Perfectly summarized.
For you listening right now, unpacking this machinery gives you an entirely new lens on the digital world. The next time you are shopping online and you toggle a language option or you notice a checkout flow subtly adjust its layout, you aren't just looking at a translation.
No, you're looking at the matrix.
You really are. You're observing a massive, high-stakes global compliance engine quietly operating behind the pixels, working to ensure that the interface remains technically functional and legally compliant across multiple conflicting jurisdictions.
It reveals just how much hidden architecture is required to make the modern web feel seamless.
But before we wrap up, there is a totally fascinating concept buried in the source material that we want to leave you pondering. The report briefly touches on the idea that truly personal digital experiences must inherently be accessible ones.
Right.
If accessibility relies on a stable, universal foundation like WCAG, what happens when artificial intelligence begins dynamically generating hyper-personalized web pages on the fly?
The implications for auditing that are just staggering.
Right. If an AI is literally assembling a unique layout, unique color schemes, and unique code structures for every individual user the second they log in, how do our static, unified WCAG guidelines hold up?
I mean, how do you globally audit an e-commerce site that is structurally different every single time it is loaded?
Exactly. Will the concept of a single standard brick survive the era of dynamically generated digital worlds? It is a wild frontier that the industry is going to have to confront very, very soon.
It's going to be a fascinating challenge to watch unfold.
Definitely something to ponder as you navigate the web today. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden layers of global accessibility. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to exploring the next complex topic with you soon.